On New Year's Eve in 2000, a young woman finished her waitressing shift at 10 o'clock and started the mile-long walk home through a small Texas town. Her parents waited for her with party hats and sparkling cider, planning to celebrate midnight together. She never arrived. By the time the clock struck 12 and the year 2001 began, Lauren Hayes had vanished from streets she'd walked her entire life. 15 years would pass before anyone discovered what happened in that walk home. This is the story of a disappearance that shattered a family and a search that never stopped. Sometimes the answers come too late. Sometimes finding someone doesn't mean bringing them back. Bridgewater, Texas, sat in the hill country west of Austin, population 6,800, the kind of town where the high school football stadium held more people than lived within city limits, where Main Street had a hardware store, a diner, a drugstore, and not much else. Where everyone knew everyone's business and strangers got noticed. The kind of place where young people left for college and didn't come back. Where the ones who stayed did so because family was here, because the cost of living was low, because moving to Austin or San Antonio felt like too big a leap. Lauren Hayes was 23, trying to figure out which category she belonged in. She'd graduated from Texas State University the previous May with a degree in elementary education. Spent the summer sending out applications, going to interviews, hoping for a teaching position somewhere that paid enough to live on. She'd gotten hired at Bridgewater Elementary in August, second-grade teacher, her own classroom, her own students, her own bulletin boards to decorate. The job she'd been working toward for 4 years. The only problem was the salary. $28,000 a year in 2000 didn't go as far as she'd hoped. After taxes, after student loan payments, after car insurance and gas, there wasn't much left. Certainly not enough to afford an apartment in town. So Lauren lived with her parents, slept in her childhood bedroom with the same posters on the walls from high school, felt like she was stuck in a holding pattern, teaching second graders during the day and serving coffee to people she'd known her whole life at night. Because the teaching salary wasn't enough, she'd taken a second job, waitress at the roadside diner on Main Street, worked there most evenings after school, picked up extra shifts on weekends. Tips helped stretch the paycheck far enough to make student loan payments and save a little toward eventually moving out. Her parents were Margaret and Tom Hayes. Margaret was 48, worked as a secretary at the middle school. She had curly brown hair going gray at the temples, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, a patient smile that came from years of dealing with teenagers and paperwork. Tom was 51, had retired from the Bridgewater Police Department 3 years earlier after 25 years of service. Now he worked part-time security at the high school, which mostly meant breaking up hallway arguments and checking that doors were locked. He knew how to stay calm in emergencies, knew how investigations worked, knew that most cases got solved in the first 48 hours or not at all. They'd raised Lauren in the small brick house on Cedar Lane, 2 blocks from the elementary school. Had watched her grow from a chatty little girl who asked endless questions to a young woman who wanted to change the world 1 second grader at a time. They didn't mind that she still lived at home. The house felt full with her there. They liked having dinner together most nights, liked knowing she was safe, liked not being empty nesters quite yet. Lauren had been talking about getting her own place in the spring. Said she'd save enough by then for first and last month's rent. Margaret secretly hoped she'd wait a little longer. The Hayes family had routines that held them together. Sunday dinners after church, Friday movie nights when Lauren didn't have to work, crossword puzzles at the kitchen table on Saturday mornings. Our community in small Texas towns understands these rhythms, the balance between wanting independence and needing family. The reality that young teachers often can't afford to live alone. The way second jobs become necessary when following your dreams doesn't quite cover the bills. December 31st, 2000 started like any other Sunday. Lauren woke up late, went to church with her parents, came home for lunch. She had the evening shift at the diner, 4 to 10, covering for another waitress who wanted the night off to celebrate New Year's. Margaret had planned a small celebration at home. Nothing fancy, just the three of them watching the ball drop on TV, toasting with sparkling cider, maybe playing cards until they got tired. Lauren promised she'd be home by 10:15 at the latest. The diner was busy that evening. People stopping in for coffee before heading to parties, families grabbing dinner before the countdown, regulars who had nowhere else to be on New Year's Eve. Lauren worked steadily, refilling coffee, taking orders, smiling even when her feet hurt, and she was tired from a long week. Around 8 o'clock, a man came in and sat at the counter. Lauren had seen him before, maybe twice in the past month. He always sat at the counter, always ordered coffee and pie, always left exact change. She didn't know his name. He never made conversation beyond placing his order, but something about him made her uncomfortable in a way she couldn't quite name. The way he watched people. The way his eyes followed her when she moved around the diner. She'd mentioned it to Rita, the other waitress working that night. Rita was 55, had worked at the diner for 20 years, had seen every type of customer. Rita had shrugged, said the guy was probably harmless, probably just lonely, that half the people who came in regularly were a little odd. But when Lauren brought the man his coffee and pie that evening, his hand had brushed hers when she set down the plate. Not an accident. Deliberate. His eyes met hers, and held for a moment too long. Lauren pulled her hand back, walked away feeling her skin crawl. She told Rita she was taking her break, went to the back room, tried to shake off the feeling. Told herself she was overreacting, that a hand brush didn't mean anything, that she was tired, and it was New Year's Eve and she just wanted to get through the shift and go home. When she came back out, the man was gone. He'd left exact change on the counter like always. The rest of the shift passed quickly. By 10:15, the diner was nearly empty. Everyone had left to get to their parties before midnight. Rita told Lauren to go ahead and leave, that she'd close up herself. Lauren didn't argue. She wanted to get home, wanted to be with her parents when the clock struck midnight. She changed out of her uniform, grabbed her purse, said goodbye to Rita, pushed through the front door into the cold December night. Main Street was busy. Cars driving past, people walking between houses, music playing from someone's open window. The air felt electric with anticipation. Lauren started walking home. It was a mile from the diner to Cedar Lane. She'd walked it hundreds of times, knew every crack in the sidewalk, every dog that barked when she passed. The first few blocks were well lit and busy. Lauren passed people she recognized, waved, called out Happy New Year. Everything felt normal, safe, familiar. Then she turned onto Oak Street, a quieter residential area, fewer streetlights, houses set back from the road. Still safe. Still her town. Just darker. Quieter. Halfway down Oak Street, Lauren heard footsteps behind her. Not unusual. Other people walked at night, but something made her glance back. A figure was walking about 20 feet behind her. Dark jacket, hands in pockets. She couldn't see the face clearly in the dim light between streetlights. Lauren walked faster. The footsteps behind her matched her pace. Her heart started beating harder. She told herself she was being paranoid. This was Bridgewater. People walked at night. It didn't mean anything. But the footsteps stayed exactly 20 feet behind her. Never closer. Never farther. Lauren turned onto Elm Street, taking a slightly longer route home, but one that stayed on more populated roads. The footsteps turned behind her. She was 4 blocks from home. Her hand gripped her purse tighter. She thought about the small canister of pepper spray her father had given her when she started working night shifts. If you've ever walked alone at night and felt the weight of footsteps behind you, felt your throat go tight and your breathing shallow, you know the specific fear Lauren Hayes felt in those final blocks. She turned onto Maple Street, 3 blocks from home. The footsteps stayed with her. She thought about running, thought about screaming, thought about knocking on a random door. But what would she say? That someone was walking behind her? That wasn't proof of danger, just paranoia. She turned on to Cedar Lane, 2 blocks from home. She could see houses she recognized, porch lights glowing. The footsteps were still there. Lauren walked faster, almost running now, her breath coming quick in the cold air. 1 more block. She could see her house, the porch light her mother always left on. She walked as fast as she could without actually running. Her keys were already in her hand. Half a block from home. Almost safe. The footsteps behind her suddenly got faster. Lauren broke into a run. She made it 10 feet before a hand grabbed her arm. She tried to scream, but another hand covered her mouth. She was pulled backward, off the sidewalk, into the dark space between 2 houses. She fought, kicked, tried to bite the hand over her mouth. Her purse fell, contents scattering across the pavement. But whoever had her was stronger, much stronger. The last thing Lauren Hayes saw before everything went dark was the glow of her own porch light, so close she could have reached it in 30 more seconds. At 11:55, Margaret Hayes looked at the clock and wondered where Lauren was. She should have been home by now. At 11:57, Tom said maybe she'd stopped to talk to someone. You know how Lauren was, always chatting. At 11:58, Margaret went to the window and looked out. No sign of Lauren on the street. At midnight, when fireworks went off across Bridgewater and people cheered and hugged, Margaret felt the first real stab of worry. By 12:15, when Tom had walked around the block calling Lauren's name and found nothing, Margaret's hands were shaking as she dialed 911. Tom's police training kicked in immediately. He knew what to look for, knew how to preserve a scene. When he found Lauren's purse on the sidewalk between 2 houses, 3 doors down, he didn't touch it, just stood there looking at the scattered contents and felt his heart break. By 12:30, his former colleagues were searching Cedar Lane with flashlights. Tom stood with Margaret on their porch, one arm around her shoulders, watching the search unfold. He knew what they were thinking. He'd worked enough missing persons cases to know the statistics. He just never thought he'd be living one. By 1 a.m., they'd photographed the scene. Wallet still there with money, and ID keys on the ground. Cell phone smashed, screen cracked. By 2 a.m., Chief Daniel Morrison was standing in the Hayes living room. He'd been Tom's partner for 10 years before Tom retired. Now he had to tell his friend that this was being treated as an abduction. Tom already knew. He'd known the moment he saw that purse on the ground. By dawn, the FBI had been called. Special Agent Catherine Ross arrived from the Austin field office and set up a command center at the police station. By morning, Lauren Hayes' face was on every TV screen in Texas. 23 years old, brown hair, hazel eyes, 5'6", 125 pounds. Last seen wearing jeans, a green sweater, and a black winter coat. Last seen leaving the roadside diner at approximately 9:50 p.m. Rita from the diner told police about the man who'd come in that evening, the regular customer who always sat at the counter. Said she didn't know his name, had never really paid attention to him. Just another face. But she remembered Lauren mentioning he made her uncomfortable. Remembered him leaving right before Lauren's shift ended. Police pulled the diner's security footage. Grainy, black and white, but clear enough. The man at the counter, Medium build, dark hair, maybe 30s or 40s. Wearing a jacket and baseball cap that hid most of his face. They showed the footage on the news, asked anyone who recognized the man to call the tip line. Tips came in. People thought they'd seen him, thought they knew who he was. Every lead was checked. None of them led anywhere concrete. Margaret and Tom Hayes spent New Year's Day 2001 in a nightmare they couldn't wake up from. Police in their house asking questions, reporters on their lawn, neighbors bringing food nobody could eat. Margaret kept saying Lauren had been so close to home. So close. If she'd walked faster, if she'd left work 5 minutes earlier, if Margaret had gone out to meet her. Tom kept